Welcome to A Seat at the Table. I am your host tonight, Tigner Rand. A seat at the table is an opportunity for rolling out to speak with business people, executives, leaders of our community, politicians, to talk about the importance of the table, the infamous table that we hear about, and how important it is to take that seat. And once at the seat, how do we make enough noise in a professional way to move the needle? On last week, during our general election on November the 8th, historical things took place in Georgia. A lot of people not aware of what took place. What happened on November the 8th in Georgia, the Democratic Party picked up 3 seats during that general election. So the General Assembly increased their number on the Democratic side. Tonight, I have talking with us to give us a little bit more insight, the Georgia House Minority Leader, James Beverly. Welcome to A Seat at the Table, State Representative Beverly. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Brother Tigner. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Oh, man, this is exciting time. A lot of people are not aware about this. So give us the little backstory of you and why this last general election was so important for the Democratic caucus.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. Thank you for the introduction, but a little bit about me, man. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland, moved to Georgia about 25, 30 years ago. Optometrist by trade, opened up a practice. Never thought I was going to ever run for office. But when you serve in a community where you're dealing with kids and eyeglasses, because I'm an eye doctor, you start to realize there's a lot of problems that are happening that ain't their fault, right? People lose their job through no fault. Their own kids can't see, so they wind up messing up in school. Most of the stuff I was doing, and I would go to the prisons and see people. And a lot of the people don't realize this, but a lot of people who are locked up and incarcerated can't see the board. And they know that at a young age. So when you can't see in front of you, at the end of the day, what you're going to do, you're going to mess with your neighbor. You're going to figure out a way. But man, I'm telling you, 70, 80% of people who were incarcerated needed glasses. It was astounding. And so when you grow up in the environment that I grew up in, Maryland, come to Georgia, you're trying to make good on the promise, right? Your community that you're dealing with, you're trying to serve the best you can, and you realize, wait a minute, we're in a bigger game here. And so I went back to school. I said, well, let me try to get my business right. When got an MBA, that wasn't enough because then the government changed the way we was getting paid through healthcare. So I wound up going to Harvard and getting a master's in public administration so I could deal with healthcare. And I came back, man, I started understanding finance and all this. Came back, and a guy who was in the seat, I was going through a divorce. It may be too much right now, man, but it's my background. I came and I moved into a community, man, where, my neighbor was on the step, like it's one of those things in the element. And I decided one of the guys who was running for state rep, he retired. So I got out of school, I came back, started knocking on doors. They're like, Dr. Bev, man, we're going to vote for you. And so I came up into the space and I won in 2011. I won in an election, a runoff election during reapportionment. I didn't know anything about politics. I never ran for anything. I was just a doctor trying to do good, right? But I won. And over the next 10, I've been there since 2011, won this election. We went through reapportionment, we lost seats, and I learned a lot through losing and just learning the system. I say, man, if I ever get that pen, they in trouble. And so having a seat at the table, which is apropos for now, there was nobody, doctor, I promise you, that I know of when I got elected, thought I would ever be the leader, including me, because I didn't come up there to be the leader. I came up here to lead and to help my community. And it just so happens that God's will is unfolding the way it is.
Awesome. And you touched on a lot of key things that's very important. And a lot of times people are not aware of it. It's the smallest things that trickle down that cause bigger problems. And you alluded to it with the eyes. And so many young people and adults can't see, thus causes other problems, thus cause potentially putting people in jail because now you're not paying attention. So now you become illiterate, ignorant to the fact of what's going on because you couldn't keep up. Right. So I commend you for seeing the pathway to take to be able to at least begin the process of what can I do. And in this case, you were able to be elected into the state representative for the state of Georgia.
Indeed, indeed.
So last Tuesday, we've had a big election. In some parts of Georgia was worldwide notices of what was going on. But in the quietness of all the hoopla and fanfare, we picked up 3 seats. Why is that so important?
Man, so the one thing about the General Assembly that people don't realize, the reason why it's so important, because in the House, you have 180 members, 180 members. And so in the House, in the Senate, you have 56. And so in the House, you have 180 members. So the magic number to get anything done, everybody hears this 50% plus 1, right? So everybody know half of 180 is 90. Plus 1 is 91. So in order to pass a bill out of the House, you have to have 91 people pass it. So you got to get closer and closer to 91. The closer you get to 91, and what happens is negotiations start a little different, right? If I got 90, if I have 120 people and you got 60, we ain't talking. We're just gonna run right by you, right? I got 110, right? And you got 70.
We might have a conversation.
We have a conversation. Doc, when you got 100, I got 80, oh, it's real, right? Because now you have people who are on the other side of the aisle who may not agree with leadership, who you now start negotiating with the details on how to move forward, right? And that becomes interesting. They say politics makes strange bedfellows. This is where the bedfellows get strange.
Okay.
Is when the numbers get closer, people start to rightly align their priorities and start to listen to their district a little bit better, as opposed to just running you right by. And that's where we are. So I had to focus. Yeah, there was a bunch of statewide elections. We talk about that. But I was singularly focused, absolutely focused on let's move the dial incrementally. And I've been doing it for years. And I'll show you some trend lines. I've been doing it years. First, I was the chair for 3 years, and then I was the leader for 2. And if you look at the last couple of election cycles, you'll see the trend that this brother was actually steady working, because the trend's starting to go up. And I knew the closer we get to 90, then all of a sudden, man, we got a blended government and we can do some wonderful things for Democrats and our people.
Briefly elaborate. You said the trend is going up. What, just kind of drill down a little bit to let people know, what does that really mean when you say the trend was going up?
Yeah. So again, I have this. You pull me back a little bit, brother Tick. So in my mind, I started thinking fractions, right? And I think in trend lines and forecast and regression analysis. All that's a part of me too. But in this space, when I look at the trend, what I look at is how many Republican seats. Again, the General Assembly has 180 people. When I started in 2011. There were 105 Republicans, 74 Democrats. It was the highest it was ever. After redistricting and reapportionment, Democrats lost 11 seats. So it went to 116 to 63, right? The next year, Democrats lost 3 more seats. So Republicans got the 119 to 60. Then the following term, it was 119 to 60. And so it was stagnated. And so things called constitutional amendments, which means you can do anything whatsoever. When you get a constitutional amendment, those things were dropping like flies. I remember it. It was horrible because they could just run right by you. 119 votes, the speaker could cast a vote. It'd be 120 to 60, you're done. And so as you're learning that, and so I go from 74 members to 63 overnight because of reapportionment. Then I lose the following term, lose 60 more. I wasn't in leadership. I'm just rank and file, cat, just, voting the way the leadership voting. And I'm watching it though. I'm learning. I'm in a thing. Okay, I'm learning like David, I make my little stones, you know what I'm saying? And just making slingshots and getting ready, right? But the reality is the trend was going down. And I said, wait a second, something's happening in Georgia. The population is changing. There are more people coming to Georgia, but our trend is going down. So you had population going up. And the census, 1 million people moved into Georgia in the last 10 years, right? A million. 94, 95% of those people are people of color. So you got that trend going that way, but we're losing members in the House going this way. And at a certain point, you got to say, okay, what is the problem? You got to lean into that problem. And that's the trend. And as I started leaning into it and watch it,
What was the
I said,
problem?
okay,
What did you see a problem? What was the problem that made you stop to say, this is the problem and we got to eradicate this problem and then make the shift, the change?
messaging, in a word, messaging, right? So so when we start winning a little bit, we start getting population in, and I think a lot of people saw this, but population start coming in. Your message got to be an inclusive message, right? So if you get more AAPI, Latinx, brothers, sisters, right? If you look at our caucus today, man, it is fantastic. I mean, it is fantastic. I mean, we got Muslims, we got Christian, you got Pakistani, you got Palestinian. I mean, all that's in our caucus right now, right? But now your boy was doing that. Okay, recruiting people, putting money in their races, doing that because I understood that the trends were changing. You got to get people who represent that group, and you got to give them a voice, you got to give them some money, and you got to teach them the system so they can now speak for Georgians. And so I doubled down on it. And I started saying, okay, if I ever get some time, I'm gonna think through how to actually put this together, pull some partners from other places to help us to see where the trends are going. And sure enough, 2017, we pick up 2 seats, right?
Awesome.
When 2018, when Trump was a factor, because people like white Republicans and white Democrats said, man, that guy crazy. And so there was all of a sudden, boom, 12 people coming to the General Assembly. They were smart, man, right? They were smart. And a lot of them still there, obviously, it's 2018. But I saw that comment, and then I became leader, and we started putting money into it. And so the trend's starting to go back up, where Democrats are starting to pick up seats, where Republicans are starting to lose it, because we're now starting to speak to Georgia as a whole and not as one monolith.
Got you. So now, fast forward, November 2022. So you picked up 3 more.
Yes, sir.
So what is the count now?
91, it's 79,101. Remember, the magic number is 90.
So now with this 79,101, so that's 101 Republicans, 79 Democrats. So
Yes,
now that means you now create an opportunity to sit at the table to negotiate in a healthy way that makes sense, and they have to listen.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing, Brother Tig, which is why I'm smiling, man, I'm so happy. I'm glad y'all doing the show because people don't know, right? But the reason why I'm so happy, man, is because the one seat, I'm gonna pick up another seat the next time. You best believe that. Because the person who lost, you know how many votes he lost by?
Probably a fraction.
314 votes.
A fraction.
So right. Out of all these millions of people vote, this guy lost, one district lost by 314 votes. You know we picking that up. I'm getting that seat. There's no way I'm not.
Right. You just got to revamp and how do we come back?
Right.
So now you got these 3 more seats.
Yep.
Great news for the state capital. So what does it mean for we the people? How can the people engage directly or indirectly on this win?
So the number one thing that we the people, including me, right? You got to get to know your state representative, whoever that is in your district, house, district, whatever it is. Look it up, figure it out, know who that is, because that person needs to hear from you right now. Hey, I'm with you. I'm pulling for you. What can I do to help you to turn out the vote more in our district? But where can I go to the district next to me that may have lost? So getting to know your state representative right now is absolutely job one. You got to do it. Because I believe, and so one of the things that I learned in business school is you got to deal with business at the base of the pyramid, right? What is the business at the base of the pyramid? So it's always good when you're dealing with the grass tops, but the grassroots need some love, right? And the grassroots need to understand what is the business of the grassroots, because that's the stuff that holds us all together. And so for me, I'm absolutely singularly focused on the base of the pyramid and the grassroots. But the grassroots got to tell the grass tops what you need so we can put in legislation and start to move the dial toward justice.
Got you. Sounds good. I like it. I agree with you 1,000%. Now you got baby over there on the other side who's on the grassroots who don't know nothing. How do we get him engaged? How do we get his sister engaged? Because they're the ones who you go to the barbershop, you hear them complaining about all these things, be it jobs, healthcare. We just closed down a hospital in Atlanta Medical Center. Makes no sense. Nobody can give us the true story about why that happened. But how do you get them? That's your grassroots you're talking about. So how do you get them involved? First of all, get them educated enough to understand the importance of the dialogue with understanding this whole concept of even meeting your state representative, talking to them.
Yes. Man, this is no pun intended, but it's an acronym called I care. That's what I think. Okay. So roll with me. I, not I, an eye doctor, but I, the capital I. You got to talk to people about, I think, 5 basic things at the base of the pyramid, right? In my community, in the hood, where we live, what we're doing in rural areas. You got to talk about 5 basic things. Number one, me being elected, how does that translate into an investment? The first one. How did that translate into an investment in your community? Now, if you're a state representative of any substance, assault whatsoever, and you represent your community, you need to think about that when you walk in the door. What investment does the public arena have that I can bring back to my community? What is the investment? That's I. C, capital. Where's the capital structure coming from? State has around $50 billion that runs through the state every year. That's state money and federal money combined. $50 billion? We should have some capital going into our community. So when you walk into the Capitol as a representative, you need to ask your representative, what kind of capital investment are you trying to get back into my community? Right? A, access. Right? What is the access point? So yeah, it's good when you have power and means and you know somebody, you got this, that, and the other. You got access to say, hey, Doc Bev, I need to talk to you for a minute. All right, my brother, right? That's one thing. But I was just at the barbershop, as you know, brother. I was like, I got to get the wig tightened up, right? I said, man, but at the barbershop, he was like, bruh, and I go to the barbershop where I live. His thing was like, man, what are we supposed to do? They got all the guns, all the money. We got to get more spiritual, right? How do we need to, right? So those kind of conversations I have all the time, but they have access to me. And so we got to be intentional about having given access to the people who elected us. How do they access you, right? I want to do something this year where you embed a constituent services person in the communities in which you live, that they work 40 hours a week, and you just, I'm gonna figure that out in the next few weeks if I'm elected leader again. The R in care is recidivism and reentry. We got to deal with that. How do you get people retooling, right? How do you retool the workforce? People lost their job through no fault of their own during the pandemic, and they are not retooled. And so you have a workforce out here trying to figure it out. And we could use money from different means to actually retool people to think about how do you take advantage of emerging markets that are coming in. So what is a reentry? What is recidivism? How do you retool people? And obviously E is education, right? The education that we need to do is education in emerging markets. And the education in emerging markets, like we're going to have, probably some form of sports betting, casino game, whatever. That's probably going to come to Georgia. But financial technology, if you look in Atlanta, you see Microsoft is here, Google's here, Facebook is here. There's a reason for that, right? Because it's warm, the climate's good, Georgia's great. It's a great place to be. I'm never leaving. I love Georgia. But the reality is when you get to Georgia, I'm a Baltimore guy. I'm never leaving. I'm a Georgia guy now, right? I'm never leaving. I love Georgia because Georgia has everything you possibly need, but you got to educate our folk for the future, what's coming, and it's here. And so when I say I care, if a state representative represents you, I would say get to know them and ask them, do you care about me? How do you care? And they better say I care because I'm training them, right? Especially Democrats. I care. Here's what the investment looks like. Here's what the capital looks like. Here's what access points look like. Here's what reentry, recidivism, and what does retooling look like. Here's what education. Here's what I bring to the table. So elect me, empower me to bring this to you. And I think we can find some symbiotic relationships with one another so that we can continue to move forward.
Awesome. That's a great acronym. Based on that acronym, what are some of the things that's on your docket now that's being discussed across the board with the caucus, and what can we anticipate some of the goals going into the next assembly?
Probably 3 things, 4 now, because there's a bunch, but I'll tell you the top one. The top one for me, without a doubt, bar none, is expanding healthcare to all Georgians. You got to have it. Because all that stuff I'm talking about is all fine and good until you get sick, right? You get sick and you ain't got no.
Amen.
Yeah, man.
Game change. The
Game
game
changed.
changes.
It just went on pause, right? The game just went on pause. And so for me, is you really have to think about what does healthcare look like in the state of Georgia so that everyone has access to healthcare. Now, there's some fundamental arguments. Is it a right? Is it a privilege? No, it's a necessity. That's what it is. It's a necessity, and we got to treat it that way. So
Amen.
one of the ways,
it's a necessity.
right? It's a necessity. Yes. Now, right, privilege, that's some foolishness that politicians talk about, right? Well, I can argue those points all day, but it's a necessity. It's like breathing. You got to have that because the number one predictor of health outcomes is whether you have insurance or not. It's not whether you're sick. It's whether you have the ability to have someone take care of you and not lose your shirt by trying to get well. So you got to do that. And the way that we can do it is extend Medicaid to working families, right? It's not you got to expand Medicaid. No, Medicaid already exists. How do you extend it to people who are working? Extend it. And everybody trying to figure out how to work. Some people who can't work, okay, they got their benefits and we'll take care of that. But how do you extend it for that group that's 21 years old to 64, 65? How do you extend those benefits so that no matter where you go in Georgia, right, you are right if you get sick? That way, the hospital that just shut down, see, for me, it's a failure of imagination by the governor. Now, I know the governor, and I'm going to have to, we're going to be getting after it, I'm sure. I know the lieutenant governor. I know all those guys. And I'm absolutely diametrically opposed to them. But they have a failure of imagination when it comes to extending healthcare to everyone. Anybody should be able, in Georgia, you come to Georgia, one thing you should know is I'm going to be all right if I get sick. I'm going to be all right. If I lose my job through no fault of my own and I get sick, I'm going to be fine. Because Georgia is somewhere, right, where we can do that. That's one. So that's one thing that I will absolutely focus on. I will be relentless as it relates to extending those benefits to all Georgians and anyone who comes to Georgia legally. I'll say that for your vote, right? Legally to Georgia. We will absolutely make sure you have the coverage you need. The second thing we got to focus on, I think, is an emerging market, is casino gaming and sports betting. Look, man, Jersey, we got these great teams, right? The Braves, I mean, you name it, Georgia. I mean, go Dogs, right? We got all this wonderful pent up demand for sports in Jersey. And I think Jersey does $1 billion a month in revenue in sports betting. $1 billion?
A month?
$1 billion. Yeah, $1 billion. $1 billion.
Wow.
Jersey.
Wow.
That team, they ain't got the Dogs. They ain't got the
They have
Falcons.
they really don't have no teams. They used to have the Nets.
They used to have the Nets. They left, but they still generating $1 billion on sports betting a month. Come on, man. Come on, man. So what I'm saying is when you have that kind of money coming in, you got to think about, because there's a lot of demand for it, right? But you got to make sure that if that money comes in, that all that money doesn't go to education. Look, I wanted to go to education. You got to do pre-K, you got to do all that, but that's a lot of money coming. And so,
yeah, you could diversify that into. There's a lot of different pockets that they could be diversified into, i.e., health.
Yep.
So some of this that could subsidize some of the things that our governor is complaining about because he doesn't want to have this, that, and the third. So, well, you can subsidize. You can put $3 billion or $4 billion or $40 million over here or whatever.
Yep.
And help subsidize some of that so it won't be all federal dollars coming through the pipeline.
That's exactly right. So thinking that through, right? So if 40% of the people go to college and 60% don't, then again, what is the economic development opportunity that comes off of that money? Because 60%, 6 out of 10 people, and the way I live is probably like 8 out of 10 people don't go to college, right? But the reality is you got to think about, how do you then incentivize a person who's working? I've been thinking about this mulling over for a couple of years once it popped up. It's like, how do you incentivize people who maybe lose their job, whatever, to stay with it and say, when I get retrained for a couple of weeks, I still can get something while I'm trying to improve myself, right? There's so many ways in which you can deploy this money. How do you do after school programs? Each community should have a community benefits agreement with this new emerging market. And so we got to focus on that because it's a real opportunity that doesn't require state money. It doesn't require us investing in anything. That's money coming in that we need to make sure that we retool it in a way and move it, appropriate it in a way that helps everyone. And we can do that. So those two. And then the last one is fintech. So
Okay.
the last one for me is fintech and emerging markets. How do you really deal with emerging markets that are coming to Georgia? It's coming whether we want it or not. It's here, right? How do we retool our educational space so that those kids, so that coding becomes a second language, right? So you taking French and Spanish and whatever, okay, that's cool. That ain't gonna get me no gig. I mean, it'll get me something at a restaurant maybe, right? But it ain't gonna get me something to sustain my life. But if you make coding a second language and you start teaching people in elementary school and middle school coding as a second language and give them credit for that, man, you have a tremendous workforce in the next 10, 12, 15 years. Tremendous. And so I'm gonna be focused on that as well.
Wow. All sounds good. I like the way you're talking. I hear the imagination, I hear the vision. How do you get the caucus to be on board? Because with all things, you always got a divided house, even within the house.
Always. What I try to do, and I've learned is I've been a leader for one term. And my results are my results. You can't argue with a brother's results. You can argue with everything else, but you look at the scoreboard.
So
Like,
facts in black and white.
Yeah, he put up some numbers now. He put up some numbers. I mean, I might not, but he put up the numbers, right? So for me, the one thing you have to do in leadership is you got to focus solely on the work. The work is the most important thing you can do, right? So whatever that work is. And when you have different people with different ideas, the work is not always defined. So you got to figure out what is the work and who are the stakeholders who are involved in this work, and let them focus on the work. Because if you get them to focus on the work, whatever that is, you have a commonality of purpose, and then you can start thinking about what does this stakeholder need, who's involved in the work that we're doing, and what do they need to go back to their communities and say so that the work continues. And so that's what I'm doing now, is how do you build a stakeholder environment where the work, we agree on the work, and then you let the stakeholders talk about how we get to a logical conclusion. And that is, I think, the strength of me being leader, because that's what I do.
Awesome. We got another problem. We got a runoff coming up in December. Then we got to prepare ourselves for the next election, presidential election, couple of years. There are so many people who are registered to vote right now. And they talked about all the people who came in and voted, and, absentee voting, early voting, whatnot, which is great. But I don't know the numbers, but it's safe to say we got another couple of million of folk who are registered who don't vote. How do we encourage those individuals to get up and vote? A lot of emphasis is always put on every election. Are you registered to vote? Are you registered to vote? Nothing wrong with that. I'm with that, because you have new 18-year-olds every year coming up. But what about those millions who are registered and have not voted one time between the ages of 21 to 65? How do you get their attention?
Man, so now you make me smile, bro, because I feel like, nobody knows this is not scripted. This is completely unscripted. I don't know.
Right. We just
going for it. Right. We're just two guys talking. But what's exciting about that question, man, is you nailed it. Boom, like you hit the nail on the head. And that is, you have to have a concerted get out the vote effort that doesn't start 5 weeks before the election. Never. You got to have a concerted get out the vote effort that starts right now. So, okay, the runoff will go, people go through the holidays, and then that get out the vote thing begins, right? And the get out the vote is sophisticated. It's not that sophisticated. You got to remind people, hey, look, you got a registration. Hey, we're doing this. So each state representative, in my book, hey, y'all better make sure that the people who are not performing, the underperforming people, we know who y'all are. Go knock on those doors. Go knock on the door. Go say hello.
It again. A lot of people don't realize there's a line of sight that you could go, you as the politician can go pull and say, me, you know how many times I voted.
Yep.
Over the last 10, 15 years.
Yep. Yep.
You know what I voted. You may not know who I voted for, but you know what I voted.
Yep. Absolutely. And I don't want to give away too many more secrets because the Republicans ain't. I mean, I don't know who's gonna hear this, man. So I'm gonna go ahead and. But yeah, there's a way to do that. There's a way to. But you got to say hello. At least start with hey, hello. I mean, ain't nothing wrong with saying hello to somebody,
Okay.
And so I think at least you start with a hello. And I'm gonna be very intentional about saying hello to a bunch of people real soon.
Okay. Tell me what you're doing. What organizations outside of being a representative, what have you created to help move the needle in your district?
Yeah, man. Thanks, bro. When I first got elected in the General Assembly, and so I'm in Macon-Bibb County. And I got elected in General Assembly in 2011, and I had gone through this course. I think they have it all over the state, but certainly they have it in Atlanta. They have it in Macon called Leadership Macon. I wound up going through Leadership Georgia, and it's just so you can get to understand the community and so forth. And what I learned pretty quickly was it wasn't crime. People talk about crime and education and whatever, blah, blah, blah. I mean, and all those are big things. But the number one thing that held Bibb County back is that people were broke. They don't have no money, poverty. And so I started thinking, well, what can I do to eradicate poverty? How do you lean into that situation? And I was like, one of those aha moments. I can create an authority to shrink category 4 poverty areas. And I went to work, started thinking about it, dealing with a bunch of lawyers and people, and I said, okay. And then it hit me. If you can create an authority that is solely focused on eradicating poverty, you can move the dial. And the Republicans like Kennedy and those guys who are now the lieutenant governor and Burt Jones, President Pro Tem, lieutenant governor, those guys know that. Like, all right, Bev, what you up to today? I said, man, I'm just trying to work on this thing. And you don't really tell people what you gotta hide your hands.
You gotta hide your hand. You playing poker.
Right. When you're at the table, we at the seat at the table, man, I ain't trying to show you all my cards. I mean, I might flash it too, but I still got 3 aces with me. You know what I'm saying? So a part of it was, how do you do that? And they were saying to me, one of the things that they said to me is that, all right, we'll give you laterality. You can create this authority. And I created an authority called the Macon-Bibb Community Enhancement Authority. And they got all behind it because it was ethereal. It was people thinking about this, that, and the other thing. And for me, it was just it was an intellectual exercise.
And it was inclusive also.
Right. Exactly. Everybody can benefit, right? They're like, all right, man, that sounds interesting. Right. Nobody created no stuff like that before. So I create this authority. And I honestly, brother, I was like, every year I make it stronger. You can accept, you can do that. And then all of a sudden, the Georgia Department of Transportation wanted to expand the highway in Bibb County, 1675, right? And they couldn't do it because 40, 50 years ago, they ran the highway through a predominantly Black community, tore houses up, went through a graveyard. It was terrible. And the community still remembers that. They're like, y'all ain't doing nothing. But now it just so happens I moved back to Macon. That's the district I represent. And so I understood everybody who was involved, and I had this little authority that said, if y'all are willing to preserve houses, move houses, and we get them out of the byway, and the community had done all the work, not me. I was just a representative. They'd done the work, but I understood what the needs of the community were. I said, okay, there's an authority that we have that I created. I didn't know it was going to ever merge. I didn't know that. And what happened was once I talked to the community said, well, we need a vehicle to help us to tell the Department of Transportation and the federal government what we need and enter in the authority. And I said, that's God. That's why I said, man, whatever God will allow, brother. My brother's smart, but I ain't that smart. I mean, come on.
God can move all kinds of mountains.
All kinds of mountains, man. I just seen it, right? And so, but one of the stipulations was, you always got to do some internal work when you do this stuff, because the internal work is, you can eat, but if you eating and everybody else starving, you're gonna get robbed. So make sure everybody else eat. Right? I mean, make sure everybody else eat. And so what I said, and that's the Baltimore in me, man. I mean, that's, it is what it is.
That's
But
real talk, though.
right.
That's real
But
talk.
it is, man. I mean, if you only eating, come on,
Hey,
man.
you got 100 people sitting around you eat like a king, and at some point, like, okay, I'm gonna get hungry enough. Let me go see what Bev got over here. I'm gonna take me some steak. Then you have a
Right.
choice at that point. All right, bro, you can come join my table. I'm gonna feed you, but then once I get you full, it goes back to the principle of Christianity. I can't force Christianity or God onto you, but if I at least meet you where you are, if you're hungry, let me feed you. But once I feed you, let me teach you.
Yep.
Then by example, you start saying, well, this brother's real.
Yep.
I'm leading by example. At that point, you're going to listen to me.
Yep.
I can't beat it over your head, even though you're trying to get me to understand, bro. I can get you a job and get you this too, and you can eat every day like me. But I'm going to feed you first.
Yep. 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 That's it. That's exactly. I mean, we just saying, right? I tell people, man, I tell some people in the caucus, I'm the same as you. I might be the leader, but I'm you too. Right? I'm you, me. So we're going to have the same kind of energy with each other. So for me, the truth of the matter is that I created this authority, and the stipulation was that everybody had to make at least $15 an hour, and all the workforce that was moving houses and rehabbing houses, they get first rights of refusal to work. And so we moved 7 houses, and then we started building houses. And then I said, well, wait, man, money's coming off of this stuff. Why don't we put all these guys through technical school and teach them plumbing, HVAC, electricity, right? Like, so I can really now, I got you now, right? If I teach you a skill.
Principle working. There it is. There it is.
So now we teach you a skill, and then, man, now, so I don't know where this goes, and I'll tell you this. So it started, and this was like 2016, 2017. So if you drive through Bibb County, and I encourage your audience, drive through Bibb County, all that stuff y'all see, that's me orchestrating a thing where they're like, okay, right? Because that is real. And DOT gave me his, y'all can keep the war.
So all that 1675 highway work that I see, then when it goes over, what's the other one? The other one, when it splits off at 75, you still doing work that way too?
Yeah, that's me. That's my district.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now, like you said, oh, wait, man. So I'm thinking about something bigger, right? I didn't know this was going to happen. But when I got into a place to negotiate with these guys straight up, they said, well, we got to go through this guy. And we yield. Go ahead and do what you got to do. Now, so that started like 2018. So I'm like just doing my thing. Then I become the chairman of the caucus. Now, and a lot of people don't know this. So even members, people who listen to this, they're not going to know any of this story. You know, because we have this conversation, but because I'm not out there like, hey, look what I did. That's not who I am as a human being. I just get the work done, and and have a good time with my friends, right? So the reality is that I'm not out here saying I'm this, I'm that. I could care less. What is the work that we need to do to help our people for real? And if you have power, so I'm a firm believer that real power does not care about you. Power only cares about itself. But if you have the ability to move it a certain way, move it toward the folk that need it. And then when your time's up, it's up. But you can't contain it. It'll kill you try to contain power. But you can help move it. And that's what I did with the authority. And so what you see, the highway and all that stuff happening, is because I was able to hear what the community said, stand on the shoulders of people before me, listen to them, and say, I think we have a vehicle to move forward. And that's what's happening. And the Macon-Bibb Community Enhancement Authority has been doing that work. The real problem, so I won't leave on sort of that's a great thing. But the problem that happened is we started to do this. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like, yeah, man, I didn't COVID.
Yeah, that was a gut punch right there.
Yeah. And so all of the stuff that we were doing, the houses stopped moving, the economy grounds to a halt. And so now I'm trying to figure out, how do we now retool so that we can help people who lost their job through no fault of their own? And now what do we do now? And so, I'm 54 years old. I was going to say I'm 27 with all this gray hair, but it ain't going to, it is what it is. But now I'm at a place.
Gray hair is wisdom. So you could have said you was 27, and that means you was a wise 27-year-old.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but unfortunately, I'm 2 times older than 27, right? But yeah, this gray hair, man, is because I constantly think about, how do we use this moment to help people who look like me and those who don't, who just trying to get on. And so that's my job for now until God has to do something else.
Awesome. In closing, what any last words that you want to say to the people? Anything that you think that will be of value for us in regards to anything we talked about?
Yeah, man. The one thing is stay engaged. Don't lose hope. Please, please, please stay engaged, stay engaged, stay engaged, stay engaged. And you can start today with calling your state rep. Figure out who your state representative is. Because if you listen to this, they got to talk to me at some point. And you know, and when they talk to me, please have a couple questions. Keep eye care in mind and ask the tough question. How are you helping me to care for myself and my community? If you do that, it'll bode well over time. And the trends are going our way now. We're going up. We're going up. So please stay engaged through the process and we'll be all right.
Awesome. In closing, I like your eye care. And I'm going to have to restate that, you know, just continuously repeat that eye care, because one of the things that I always tell people that people don't always understand it. When it comes to voting, what is your representative doing to help you?
Right.
That's where it starts. And that's a part of your whole I care part.
Right.
You know, right. Me talking to you or at least reading your agenda, say, okay, Brother James here, he's in line with my beliefs. And so at that point, at least on paper, I'm in line with you to vote for you. Right. And I think that's probably one of the biggest problems that people, when it comes to trying to pick someone to vote for, they either trying to vote straight down this ticket, or you're not looking at how they're going to help you as an individual, then as a family, then as a community. And it's pretty much in that order. Then you take that on up to the state level, from the local level to the state level to the federal level. And you look at each one. How is my local representative going to take care of my community? How is he going to help me based on everything he said? I lost my job. How's he going to help me? How's the state going to help me? Then you go to your go up to Washington. How are they going to help? That's the key. I care should be branded. I care should be branded and used as a tool to help people to get the simplicity of understanding why it's important and how to look at a person as your representative.
Amen. Amen.
That's it.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've had with us today State Representative James Beverly. We've talked a little bit about what's going on in Georgia. As he stated, get in contact with your state representative. Find out who that person is, he or she. Try to know them, get to know them, find out what their agenda is and how they best can represent you as an individual, as a family, and as a community. And this is what we do at A Seat at the Table, bring thought-provoking information to you so that it will be able to help you and be a tool to better educate you in your daily life. Thank you again, State Representative James Beverly, for your time and for your knowledge. Until we meet again, make it a great day. Be safe. This is Seat at the Table.